South Africa, MTN is in talks with Telkom to combine South African phone groups. MTN Group Limited is in talks to buy smaller domestic rival Telkom SOC Limited in a deal that would combine South Africa's second and third largest telecommunication operators. Telkom shares were up 15% on the news, the most since September, valuing the company almost 20 billion rands, about $1.2 billion. To discuss further, we have Sanyade Okoli, who's the CEO of Alpha African Advisory. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, we can start with South Africa. Do you think, what do you make of the deal? Do you think the competition regulator in South Africa will be worried about MTN buying these companies and getting bigger?
Well, right now, Vodacom, which is the largest player, has a market share of about 42%. And if you combine MTN and Telkom, that takes them to about 47%. So it makes them the largest. Yeah. So obviously that's part of the attraction. And MTN is cash rich at the moment, and but not a dominant position. And then in third place, you have Cell C. Difficult to say what the regulator would do, but I don't think you still have three decent sized players.
So as long as there's some competition there, right? We shouldn't be too.
What I thought was also interesting is, though the talks are in early stages, there are questions as to the form that the transaction will take and whether MTN will pay part of it in cash and then some in shares.
Right.
But as you know, Telkom is partly owned by government, and we all know the tensions and the financial situation government is in.
Right.
So it may be that, and we know about talks about them exiting some of these private companies.
Yeah.
So it may be that there's some push from that side for the regulator not to fight it.
Okay. Well, thanks for bringing that to light. Let's move to Kenya. Fuel subsidies. Any surprise in them paying this much to keep fuel?
Honestly, I don't think we can talk about that story separate from the
IMF.
From the IMF.
Yeah, right.
Because I was reading the IMF first,
yeah,
and I was thinking to myself, okay, what's going on here, and
right.
how?
That's
because
the waivers, right?
It's the waivers. So let's talk about that.
Okay, fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Kenya is seeking waivers from IMF, and we actually spoke about IMF last week.
We did.
Some of the conditions they put.
Yeah.
In this case, for Kenya, the conditions are reforming some of the state-owned enterprises,
right,
special audit on COVID-19, things about the some government workers and some of the declarations, etc.
Central payroll thing,
Central
all that.
payroll, and also debt, them moving more towards concessionary debt, either from multilaterals or Eurobonds, etc., rather than bank debt. But they haven't met all the conditions immediately, but they're seeking a waiver because they need the money, because there's deficits, but then you have debt at about 67% of GDP. Debt service,
so revenues,
67% of revenue,
right,
and it's about 70% of GDP from about, I think, 45% in 2015. So you see debt climbing.
Yeah.
But you see deficit that they're trying to plug. So I was like stepping back, I was like, okay, what needs to happen here? And I thought, well, what a lot of countries need are selfless leaders that are going to take difficult decisions that might cause some short-term pain. But we also recognize are politically uncomfortable. So that was my thinking.
Yeah.
And then I got to this other story, which you're just talking about.
On the subsidies.
And I had to laugh because we have to see the connection, right?
Right.
So climbing debt, they're struggling.
You're asking for waivers.
You're asking for waivers.
And then you're paying a subsidy.
Which you cannot obviously afford because you have elections in 3 weeks.
It's just...
Do I need to say anything else?
Right in the face of the IMF, they're doing this. But it's really tough, though. I mean, with the elections coming up, you don't want to get increased fuel prices, but you don't have the money.
So it takes it back. But where are those leaders? Because if you think about it, most of our political systems do not really allow the leaders that will make the right decisions to come to the fore. And there we have an issue.
That's the problem. What's your I'm not sure if I've asked you this before. We've talked about, what's your view on the IMF and the outsized role? It's not just Kenya. who? Ghana is talking to them. Tunisia is talking to them. I don't know, Sri Lanka at some point. How do you see the role of the IMF right now?
So we've gone through COVID. We have a war.
Yep.
Inflation in a lot of countries, increasing debt at a time where revenues have suffered.
Yep.
So they're struggling.
Yeah.
Some, like Kenya, had been borrowing from banks, but were struggling to afford the higher cost.
Yeah.
So you're looking for cheaper debt. Where do you go? You go to IMF. But as we already know, with IMF, you don't just come. They're not just, Father Christmas, just doling out cash, right? They they see some of the issues in our countries and economies and try and shape policy whilst giving us the money. Sometimes, well, to be honest, a lot of the times, it's not that the conditions are
too stringent,
unjustified.
Yeah.
It's just that, for example, here with Kenya, they're struggling to meet those conditions. So again, they're talking about getting cheaper debt. They went out to the market with Eurobonds, and the pricing that they were offering, the market didn't find attractive, so they had to cancel that.
Yeah.
So they're forced to go back and look at bank debt, higher costing bank debt.
Right.
So i.e., we need them,
Yeah.
but we've got to, a lot of economies need them, but they've got to realize that there will be strings attached.
Is the IMF unjustly viewed by a lot of the locals? In Tunisia, for example, the unions are like, no, you're not going to, government is not going to agree to this term. The IMF is demonized, is basically what I'm asking you. Is that fair in a lot of circles? Well, how do you, I mean, you're a finance person, so you understand the rules and why they're doing this, but do you think to the average Kenyan, Tunisian, Nigerian that thinks the IMF is this big devil that just wants to choke countries down, do you think, is that fair based on what?
I think it's, for some of them, because of the challenges they have faced, because of some of the IMF-induced policies, you can see why they feel like that. And then this is where you have questions about sometimes with the IMF, why are they doing it? Is it, neocolonialism,
exactly,
etc.? It's not an easy one. But as I said, they're not Father Christmas, and some of their policies are justified, even if difficult. Which is why you ask yourself: Are they faithful? Are they wounds from faithful friends, as opposed to kisses from our enemies?
Gotcha. Well put. We're still talking debt. Safaricom, what do you make of how they're able to restructure this facility?
I say good on them. Because first of all, it's bridge financing, and bridge financing is always more expensive. And some of it was obviously FX denominated at a time where, in the last year, the Kenyan shillings it depreciated roughly about, say, 10%. So you see rising cost increasing, and it's just going like this. So you see increasing FX risk. So it makes sense for them to restructure and make some of that local currency denominated.
I want to ask you about that. How on earth were they able to do that? Because if you're a lender, and the borrower is coming to ask you to convert a portion of your loan into, you're taking a haircut, are you not? Because of the depreciation of the currency?
Not necessarily. Because the cost of local currency debt is invariably higher in terms of the interest rate than FX denominated. And also, as a lender, you're looking at risk, right? And you want to reduce your risk. So if, someone like Safaricom, obviously, expect a lot, if not most of its income will be in local currency. So you don't want the mismatch, the currency mismatch, where they're earning depreciating local currency, but yet being forced to service debt in FX.
Gosh. What do you make of the appreciation of the dollar and what it is doing to emerging markets across the world? I mean, what is there any respite? Do you think? Because we've seen the dollar index, we've seen its appreciation, the yen, everything is just falling against it, and the impact it's having on emerging markets. Any respite at all? Tough question.
Well, there are issues everywhere. Even take, for example, Sri Lanka, right? It might seem random. You've got to admit there'd be a lot of government leaders that would be feeling rather shaky. You just spoke about Mozambique, etc. The world is a really funny place at the moment. So each country has to look at their own reality and just begin to say, how can I mitigate risk? How can I mitigate risk? And intentionality is key. You cannot kick back and expect things to just happen.
Yeah.
You've got to be very strategic in how you ensure you, first of all, identify the real risks, identify and quantify the real risks to your country, not just economic, but obviously social, political, etc., and put clear mitigants and execute.
Right.
Don't just talk, execute.
If you, there's protests in Mozambique over cost of living, protests in Panama, there are protests in Ghana, protests in Sri Lanka. I could go on and on and on. Are you worried at what you're seeing right now across the globe with I mean, you mentioned COVID and the war at the beginning already, but it's alarming.
But not surprising.
Yeah.
Just look at what's happened to inflation rates. So people have come from 2020, 2021, which were very difficult times.
Yeah.
Mental health issues, that's gone up. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of tension. So it's not at all surprising. And again, as I said, if I were somebody in government, I would take note and make sure that I am not only doing, but being seen to be doing the right things. So I don't have social uprising in my country.
Right. And if we, on the debt matter, if you put Safaricom side by side with what Kenya is going through, and is that the model, the private sector model, the way they've been able to restructure their debts, or is it an unfair comparison because that's a private corporation with shareholders versus a country that's had to deal with elections and so many things?
Unfair comparison, but what I would say is that for governments, they've got to think growth. And they've got to make sure that they're taking steps today that do not hamper growth tomorrow.
Even in this current environment, with oil prices and the dollar and everything, it's still possible.
Well, you have to think that way, because what seems to often happen is they look at the problems today and panic and think, okay, raise income. And I know you've got to survive today, but you've also got to think about the medium and long term.
So you've got to be forward thinking.
You have to be, because otherwise you will get caught out, because we're in a very unpredictable time.
Right.
We don't know what trouble awaits us tomorrow. So best be in a better position to weather those storms.
Gotcha. Well, that's why you run an advisory company. Sanyade Okoli, CEO, Alpha African Advisory. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.